Hi, I'm Anthony for Cindy Backyard Veggies. Just been away from my patch for the last 2 weeks on holidays. So I'm coming back in this morning to start doing some work. The plants thankfully have thrived while I've been away, but they do need a lot of work. There's a lot of weeds popping up and it just needs some bit of TLC. So today I'm going to go through my patch, see what needs to be done, and take you along for the ride. I'm over at my main brassica patch here and the plants are doing absolutely amazing at the moment. I need to come through and do a lot of weeding and a lot of side dressing with nitrogen fertilizer. But what I might do first is, before I start working this patch, is actually take you through and show you where my plants are at the moment. So this is my main brassica patch, and this is in my main garden bed here, the west facing part of my garden. And I planted out most of this bed about a month ago, and I did a video on that and I'll post it up in the description notes. Over here to my left I've got my third planting of broccoli, and this was planted out in late January. And coming across, this is my green coronet cabbages, my green cabbages, and again there's 3 rows here planted, and you can see they're looking quite good. I've actually put on a bit of size, but they're in need of a bit of a prune and the like, but they're looking amazing. And next to them I've got 2 rows of red cabbage, and this is called Red Queen. Again, the weeds have been taking over the space, but I need to come through and clean them out. And then to the right I've got my 4 rows of cauliflower. This variety is called Serenity, and looking really good. The ones on the left hand side were planted probably about a week before the ones on the right, so they're quite a bit smaller. But what I have had is, this is the old tomato patch, and I've got a full explosion of, you know, beautiful looking tomato plants, but I'm not going to keep those. Those are going to have to come out. It's too late in the season, but the plants are doing all right. There was a little bit of insect damage, as you can see there, but a bit of a spray today and it'll clean them right up. A bit of pyrethrum. And then finally over at the left I've got my sugar snap peas, and I planted these again direct seeded. They're doing okay. They need a bit of staking, and I'll probably get onto that this afternoon. But first thing I'm gonna have to do is, every winter when it comes along, I get a lot of chickweed come through, as you can see there, and I need to come through and just dig them all out, give it a quite good clean up, just make sure that all these weeds don't outcompete the plants. So first job for the day is to come through and do a thorough weed of the whole patch. So using my homemade wire weeder, come through and just knock out all those weeds. Getting onto them early is best. It just makes it easier to kill these annual weeds. Just going to gently just run it through and get through the lot. Coming over to my cabbage patch, and because the cabbages have actually filled up the row, it's going to be quite difficult to run my wire weeder in between the plants. So I'm going to come through and just hand weed all these chickweeds. But on top of that, while I'm here, I want to start getting rid of a lot of these lower leaves, as you can see just around here, that actually aren't adding much value, but if anything, adding to the pest pressure on these plants. These are points where slugs and diseases can come through. So I'm just going to remove those, and they get collected to the chickens, and you can see they're still relatively clean, but could be points where insects come, and just as part of the maintenance, just really clean those lower leaves off. So there, so now it looks a lot better, and I'll continue through and just keep cleaning those leaves as is. And finally, over at my broccoli patch, I'm just going to, again, where I can, the larger weeds, just pull them out, but also the lower leaves, again, just click them off, just to get the plants concentrating on growing the head. they're looking really good. Not much disease in them, which is great, and no insect damage, but I'm going to continue through and just keep cleaning the last of this row and then move on from there. And just as I'm working through this, as a side note, just got my bucket of leaves, the lower leaves, grasses and stuff, and nothing gets wasted in my garden. This won't go to the compost, rather it will go straight into the chicken pen, where the chooks will then be able to pick through it, and then from there I will then use the bedding, anything that's left over, the chicken manure and any of the bedding that's left in that pen, then that all gets composted and goes back into the garden. So I've got somewhat of a closed loop system here, so I don't really mind weeds, don't really mind bad veggies, because everything gets used in my patch. Quickly drop these off to the chickens, and then I'll show you what my finely weeded garden looks like. So I've just finished working through that whole patch, and now it looks like 100 times better. The plants can breathe now. There's not too much competition from the chickweed or from the tomato plants. And if I bring you clover to the cabbages, you can see, I'm not sure if you can see that from behind, but you can see that the plants just look a lot better. There's a lot more airspace, especially those leaves at the bottom that I've removed. That will suit them really well. Now that's done, I need to come through and add my side dressing to these plants, and they all need nitrogen fertilizer, but the way I'm going to be doing it is a bit different depending on the size of the plants and where they're at in their growth. So first things first, I'm going to come through and fertilize the cauliflowers and the cabbages, and I'll show you what I'm going to add to them. So coming back over to my cauliflowers, and I'm going to go do some fertilizing. Just going to add a bit of sulfate ammonia. I'm going to put a little sprinkling adjacent to each of the plants, and then I'll come through and water that in. But I'm actually going to be doing that for the 4 rows of cauliflower, and then for my cabbages as well, just giving them a bit more of that nitrogen, quick nitrogen burst early while the weather's still warm, gets them going, puts a lot of bulk on those plants, and hopefully sets them up for the cooler months when they'll be slowly growing to harvest. So I'm going to come through, just quickly add just a little pour adjacent to each of the plants, and then I'll come through and water this in. And then following through with the hose, I'll just make sure that all that fertilizer is dissolved and watered in, and just make sure, what I'll try to do is try to spread the fertilizer in between the 2 plants, so both seedlings get some of the fertilizer. Now coming over to my broccoli plants, and because they're at that time now, they're almost about to start producing in the next 2 weeks, I like to give them a liquid feed, and I'll apply this liquid feed as a foliar feed across the plants. And what I like to use is anything with high nitrogen content. Specifically, I like to use in my context power feed, but anything with high nitrogen. This one has 12%. Just a full watering can, and mix it in, and just going to go through and just apply it to all these plants. So just applying this, I'll just pour it over the leaves, just a little bit on each plant. So I've now done what I need to do in this patch. I've gone and weeded, added my fertilizer, given them a good water in. They do need to be healed, and I'll do that over the next few weeks. But at this stage, I'm quite happy with it. One thing I will finally do before I wrap up work in this section is I will come through and give them a spray of pyrethrum. The last spray I gave these plants was about 3 weeks ago, and I am starting to see a little bit of damage on the leaves from the cabbage moth caterpillars. Now, they should fall off. The pressure from those should fall off as it gets cooler, but at this stage I'm still seeing a bit of damage, so I'll come through and just give them a light spray. So now that I've finished working here, I'm going to go show you my Womboks, and they're just over here, and these were planted at the same time as my main brassica bed. I'll quickly show you where that's at. And I was going to do some light work on this patch as well. So this is my Wombok patch, and again, these were planted at the same time as the patch at the front, the brassica patch. I've got 4 rows here of about 7 plants in each row. Now, the ones adjacent to the jalapenos are a bit behind because of the amount of sun they're getting. But generally speaking, everyone else is doing okay. Now, some of them I did lose a few when the big rains came through, but they seem to have bounced back. What I'm going to come do here is, like I did at the front, I'm going to come through and just do a wire weed just to knock out all that chickweed. And I'm going to add sulfate ammonia to these. I'll give them water and then I'll let them be for a couple of weeks. I'm going to come through and do that now. And just to wrap up the day work in the patch, moving over to my jalapenos, and I need to get another batch of candied jalapenos made. Now I'm going through this patch and I'm still struggling a lot with fruit fly damage, but now that the weather's starting to cool down, I'm hoping that most of the fruit will still be okay. But coming through and looking at them, as you can see, some of them look okay. These ones look pretty good, but there is still a few damaged ones, and you can just see just over here, as you can see, there's just a little bit of damaged fruit there. But I'm going to come through and just harvest what I can. The damaged fruit would obviously go to the chickens, and that'll be just a way to control the fruit flies in my garden. Don't let the rotting fruit rot in the ground, because that will harvest next year's fruit flies. I'm going to harvest what I can, and hopefully if there's enough, I might come through tonight and actually make a batch of pickles with them. So I'm going to come work through them now and see what I can end up with. Still got a bit of fruit fly damage there. So I just finished harvesting them, and I'm glad I got a nice amount here, probably in the order of maybe I would say 2 kilos, 2.5 kilos, which is excellent. I will take these inside, put them in the fridge, and then I'll probably process them on the weekend. Now the plants, I did a previous video where I added all that fertilizer to them, and it's really helped. There's been a big flush of flowers. It is starting to cool down a bit, so I'm not expecting a lot of these flowers. There is some new flowers showing up, but I'm not expecting them to hang around for much longer. There is still a lot of small ones which are growing out, but definitely the fruit is a lot smaller now. But it just comes with the season. We are coming into late autumn now, and the temperature has dropped a fair bit over the last 2 weeks. Probably come through and harvest these again in about 3 weeks time, and then look at which plants I'm going to overwinter. So I'm going to take these inside now. Been in the evening, the dusk, so done enough in my garden today. Still got a lot of work to do tomorrow, so I'll probably get in out there this weekend and continue working in the patch. Just before I wrap up this video, just wanted to bring you over to my first planting of cauliflower. Now when I left this, before I went on holidays, I hadn't seen any heads pop out yet, and I was hoping that they will start to be ready for harvest, and I'm happy to say there are a few heads showing. I'll come and show you those. So this is the cauliflower patch, and I've done a few videos on this, and there's I think 21 plants in this location. I'm just coming up closely, and you can see just there, I've got my first cauliflower showing out there. That's about palm size at the moment. It will be ready in about, I would argue, in about a week's time, so I'll be back in about 7 days to harvest that. But I'm looking at a few of them have got heads of various sizes, so I'm really excited to harvest them. At this point, I don't give them any more fertilizer. What I'm going to do is just give them one final spray of pyrethrum just to clean up any pests, especially aphids. Don't like to have a head full of aphids when I harvest it, so doing that one last spray before I harvest is a good idea. Yeah, it looks really, really good. I'm really happy with these, and they actually did hold up quite well while I was away, so I'm coming over to harvest that. And once this bed is cleared, I'll be planting broad beans in this location. So thank you very much everyone for joining me in this video. I really appreciate the support. I really am happy to be back in the garden, even though I've been on holidays. It's quite fun. It's nothing like spending a day in the patch doing a bit of work. So, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.